Everdark, Episode 91, Kittens Rule. Last on Everdark, Julian and Christian introduced Elgar to some of the wonders of modern technology, but Elgar wasn't as enchanted as they imagined, at least, not at first. "I'm surrounded," Balthazar cried out as the 4 kittens took their places. A black, cheeky fellow was on the armrest of the couch he sat on. A tortoise-shell-colored one was parked in front of his feet, blocking his escape. One as white as snow with huge blue eyes was on the couch cushion beside his, though one paw was experimentally lifting towards his thigh. And the final bugger, a shadowy grey number with pudgy cheeks and long whiskers, was on the back of the couch, his tail brushing Balthazar's cheek.
"By kittens! You're surrounded by kittens,"
Christian said, with absolutely no sympathy whatsoever. In fact, his fledgling appeared ready to laugh. "You act as if that makes them any less deadly." His voice rose up. "Notice how they have chosen to surround the one person who does not find them adorable. They know that I am their nemesis. They will overcome me."
"It's because you're sitting so still and not bothering them. Cats love people like you,"
William pointed out. He was looking longingly at the kittens, but stayed by the fireplace's mantel. It had been determined to allow the little squeakers free rein and see who they chose to go near. They had all chosen him.
"They like you best, Balthazar,"
Sophia said in her sing-song voice, and then covered her lips as she giggled. She was seated on the floor of the living room, where seemingly every single vampire in his house had assembled to ooh and ah over the fuzzy monsters that had taken over his domain. The only people not there were Julian, Damon, Arceus, and Fiona. The 4 of them were in deep discussions involving the Order. Balthazar couldn't help rolling his eyes when they talked about religion, so he had thought he was getting the better part of the bargain when he agreed to see the gifts that Elizabeth Thorne had gotten Sophia. Julian had let out a laugh, which had made him suspicious, but since he knew it was rude to read Julian's mind, he had let it pass. "Foolish me. Why don't you at least sit with me, Christian?" Balthazar whined. The kittens might be disturbed and leave. That would be excellent. But Christian remained standing as well behind Sophia, arms crossed. His lips really were suspiciously twitching. The traitor!
No, I'm good. I have a perfect view from right here. Besides, I need to observe them to help come up with names.
Christian tapped his chin, as if the naming of the beasts truly took some intellectual heft. "Sire, as a fellow immortal, you should assist me in solidarity," Balthazar called to the blind woman who sat in a large, high-backed armchair by the fire, looking rather like a queen. She did not hide her smile.
"Oh, Balthazar, if you could only see yourself in this moment. It is a sight I do not want to miss."
"Are you taunting me?" He scowled at her.
"Not at all. I promise you I can see quite well. The short-term future is always very clear,"
she told him.
"And we're taking pictures to remember it by,"
Ridley said, as she used her phone to catch seemingly every angle of him and the beasts.
"Oh, look! The black one is planning on leaping on you."
Alarmed, Balthazar's eyes darted towards the cheeky black one on the couch's armrest. Indeed, he had hunkered down and was wiggling his butt, as if winding himself up. He leaped. Balthazar bit back a cry as the black piece of fluff landed directly on his crotch.
"Aww,"
everyone said. Ridley took another dozen pictures. Balthazar grimaced. The black one was now kneading his crotch as if he expected milk. Elena was even smiling, though her face still showed a bone-deep grief and exhaustion.
"I bet by the end of the week you'll want them sleeping with you."
"Gods, no!" Balthazar cried. The grey one behind him let out a sharp meow of shock at the loud noise he'd made. He soothed it with a few low words. "That is not happening," he whispered, keeping his voice much softer so as not to disturb the kittens. "Christian, I demand they be banned from the bedroom."
But they're kittens. They cannot be left on their own at night.
Christian was frowning. "This is ridiculous." They have a whole house full of vampires who, from the dumb looks of love on their faces, would be more than happy to host them. Balthazar's voice was rising. He lowered it once more. Sophia begged for these things. Surely she will want them?
Oh, I do.
Sophia assured him. She was, in fact, looking at the kittens rather rapturously.
But Seer must rest, and the kittens are notorious for wanting to play.
Balthazar's head shot towards Seer. He couldn't deny that the immortal looked far better than when they'd found her, but she was still way too thin. So he couldn't deny that she needed her rest. That meant he wouldn't be getting any unless someone kept these kittens away. The white kitten placed a paw on his thigh. He felt the prick of baby-sharp claws dig into his flesh. He did not dare pull away. His pants might be damaged, and he was sure to be scratched. Plus, the white kitten had a most piteous meow when she didn't get her way. So the paw and claws remained, with him enduring all of it. Elizabeth Thorne looked on with a wide smile.
I can see that the kittens are a big hit.
Balthazar narrowed his eyes at her. He knew who was to blame for this. Do you not think that you should have waited until this war with the Callie is over before bringing pets into our lives? Balthazar's tone was a little arctic. Elizabeth, however, appeared as unrepentant as her son.
On the contrary, I think with war on the horizon, we should live for the moment. We shouldn't wait to do all we want.
They are adorable.
Henry Thorne rubbed his chin.
I know we said no more pets for a while, Elizabeth, but seeing these little guys...
You can take these. You can have them, Balthazar pleaded.
Those are not yours to give away.
Elizabeth reminded him firmly.
You can't give my and Christian's kitties away.
Sophia looked stricken. Her pleading face had him swallowing. Of course not. Christian was giving him a hard stare too. He stood now between his parents, and it seemed that the Thorns, by the power of 3, were causing Balthazar to wilt.
I was rather thinking of us getting a dog,
Henry said evenly. A dog? Oh, not cats. Elgar, my favorite fledgling. Balthazar gave Christian a hard stare this time, which elicited no reaction whatsoever. Well, Christian smirked, so that was a reaction, just not the one Balthazar had hoped to induce. Save me, Elgar. Elgar? Elgar was seated as well in a pair of sweatpants and a hoodie that practically swallowed his thin form. He was hunched over the tablet that Christian had given him. He had discovered the internet and appeared completely and utterly lost in all the information he could see through one electronic window. Balthazar didn't think that Elgar had blinked, let alone noticed anyone or anything since he'd seen all the information at his fingertips. He did, however, still have that damned skull in his lap. Evidently, it was the equivalent of his security blanket. Elgar? Balthazar called. Earth to Elgar? Elgar's head finally shot up. Colour flooded his cheeks. Master? You, Oh, how sweet. You are making friends with the kittens. No. I want you to. Balthazar's voice drifted off as Elgar was absorbed back into the internet. He sighed. To save me? But Elgar's head remained down. He sighed again. No one was going to save him. He was so unloved. The black cat curled on top of his crotch and purred. The grey one dropped down onto his shoulder and was leaning against his cheek. The tawny one was on his feet. Finally, the white one still had a paw on his leg. Her eyes closed, evidently having fallen asleep sitting up. A third sigh.
I cannot wait to share these pics.
Ridley enthused. More pictures, more ahs, more sighs.
What are we doing next about Callie?
William asked, evidently able to pull himself out of his kitten-drunk reverie. That is a very good question, Balthazar said. The grey kitten toppled over, and he quickly caught the little bugger before he tumbled down his chest. He thought about placing the kitten on the couch, but it mewed so sweetly that he found himself simply placing the kitten back on his shoulder where he settled into a doze again. Christian was smiling at him so hugely for that action that he almost didn't mind it.
My phone has been blowing up.
Ridley told him between pictures.
I think I've heard from every single Iros.
You're not alone.
William held up his phone as if it were an exhibit.
They want to come here, Balthazar.
Here? To the manor?
Elena's forehead furrowed.
Is that wise? There are bound to be Callie sympathizers among them, not to mention finding out that immortals exist among us.
She let her voice drop off.
I can only imagine how this announcement must be seen.
Henry said, stroking his chin again.
It would be like the saints coming down from heaven.
Saints.
William coughed.
Balthazar? A saint?
Ridley snickered too, which made Balthazar happy. They accepted him as Eiros, but they loved him as Balthazar. It was such a relief.
Well, perhaps more of a sinner.
Henry chuckled.
But there will be definite awe and even fear. Your existence among them all this time will have them doubting their understanding of their world.
Hopefully they will accept it as we did with the existence of vampires.
Elizabeth said.
You took our existence very well, Elizabeth, Mommy.
Sophia said. She rested her head against Elizabeth's leg, rather like the kittens were doing to him. Elizabeth petted her head. The kittens were now making purring noises as well, little motors that rumbled against his muscles. It was almost pleasant. Almost. I cannot believe I am saying this, but I do think the order will be helpful in keeping people calm. Balthazar laid his head back on the couch. The grey kitten adjusted closer to his neck. Now he wouldn't be able to lift his head without squishing the little guy, so he remained how he was.
If people thought about the damage and the lies that the Order has perpetrated on all of us, they would be the last people anyone would trust.
Elena crossed her arms over her chest. If Balthazar remembered rightly, Elena had been very devout when she was human and had been inspired by the Order. She had asked Roan if she could join the Order as a confessor. He, of course, had said no, because it meant so much to her, and it would take her out of his power. But now her expression was grim, betrayed undoubtedly by what they had all learned from Damon and immortals existing.
But what about Callie?
William demanded.
When do we go against him?
Soon. It was Damon who answered. And all of a sudden, every single kitten was awake.
I've made a few attempts to do some gay romance fairy tale retellings. The trouble is, I'm an action and adventure writer, so there's a whole lot of story that just isn't there in the originals. Cursed is my most faithful retelling. It's a gay romance version of Beauty and the Beast with tiger shifters. But it does feature a good-hearted hero who nobly sacrifices himself to live with an enigmatic, reclusive rich man in his mansion who turns out to have a dangerous and sexy secret. He turns into a white tiger. The story has a lot of margaritas and emotional drama, which is why it's 3 books long. The link to it is in the notes.
Plaintive and excited meows left each of the little squeakers' mouths. They were hopping off him, abandoning him, and racing across the floor, their little feet skidding out from under them on the slick wood floors towards the Vampire King. Balthazar wasn't sure how Damon would react to the fuzzy ones, but if he had thought that the Vampire King would have a negative reaction, he was soon disabused of it. Damon swept down and gathered each of the 4 kittens in his hands and brought them immediately up to his face. The kittens were so small that he could easily hold 2 in each hand. He showered them with kisses. The excited meows were so sweet that every person was looking at the tableau with huge anime eyes. Such wonderful babies. Yes, you are. Oh, my sweet ones, I have you. Oh, yes, another kiss, and another kiss. I did not mean to miss you. Here, you get 2 kisses. Damon followed through on his promises. Elgar immediately got up onto his feet, internet forgotten. My king, Elgar breathed. His second was about to get on his knees, while everyone else looked on in bewilderment, except Arceus. Arceus was the bowing type. But though Balthazar adored Damon and respected him no end, he would have found it incredibly tiresome to get up, bow, and scrape every time the Vampire King entered the room. The manor wasn't that large, and Damon was sometimes underfoot. Sort of like the kittens. Seer began to gracefully rise as well, and Balthazar was about to scramble to his feet when Damon urged them all to sit. I am honored by this, but there is no need for such formality here and now, Damon assured them. His lips twitched as he said, Eiros is quite right, that all you would be doing is bowing and scraping because his pleasant abode is a little abode. For now. Balthazar shrugged when Elgar gave him a slightly scandalized look and Seer a small smile. It's true. I love him too, but we have things to do, and bowing takes a lot of time, Balthazar said as he settled himself back on the sofa.
Yeah, I'm all for no bowing,
Julian admitted with a shrug. Damon kissed his fledgling's forehead. You must get used to some niceties.
I suppose so.
Julian stood beside his master, grinning from ear to ear, reaching up and scratching the kittens between the ears. The kittens looked to be completely in love. Balthazar touched where the black kitten had been curled up. Christian caught the action, and he quickly pretended to be plucking fur from his clothes. He did not feel betrayed that the kittens left him immediately for Damon, though at least that showed sense, preferring the vampire king above all others.
You look a little peeved to have lost your animal companions.
Arceus rumbled. Not in the least. They were furring me. Now Damon can understand the joys of black clothing and fur. Balthazar sniffed. Christian came over and sat beside him, slipping against his side as easily as the kittens had. Balthazar leaned over and kissed his head just as Damon kissed the kittens. Christian turned and kissed him back, though. Damon and Julian joined them on the couch. Before he sat down, Damon carefully placed the kittens in the lap of Sophia's dress. They meowed for him, but quickly settled down once she was petting them. Julian kissed Elizabeth and embraced Henry before taking his seat. We must talk about what is to come, Damon said as he slid an arm around Julian's shoulders. Arceus and Fiona went to the mantelpiece. They stood on either side of the fire and looked like matching bookends in their leather confessor clothing. You said earlier that I should expect crowds. There are no crowds here, Balthazar pointed out with an amused smile. Damon smiled back. They are coming. Of course they will come, Master. You are Eiros, Elgar assured him. Part of Balthazar didn't believe that. He'd been an outsider all his vampire life, at least this time around. He couldn't imagine being mobbed. He had called for all the Eiros to come, and some had, for sure, to Solace. Lisette and her people had returned through the gate to continue to operate things there. Arceus and Fiona were supposed to return as well, but the thought of them being mobbed here at the manor still seemed outlandish to him. Maybe they would come to see Damon, but not him. I will take both your words for it, Balthazar said, and found himself looking at the kittens almost lovingly. Dogs, more than cats, gave unconditional love, but the kittens, no. He did not care for the furry beasts one bit. I realize that many of you want to know what we are to do with Callie, Damon said to the solemn room. There was a bit of fire in his house's eyes as well. Callie vampires were not favorites. Callie himself was definitely not liked after what had happened to Heath. Looking at Elena, he saw yet more reason to dislike the other immortal. But do I trust her? Damon says we can, but her loss is so deep it is hard to get a read on what she is feeling, other than deep grief. And am I still to punish her? He didn't know what he wanted to do, let alone what he was supposed to do.
Will we bust into Callie's city and take him out?
William clenched a fist, and his silver eyes gleamed.
A little bloodthirsty there, William.
Ridley laughed.
Don't you want to get some back? We've been treated like crap. Callie wants to keep the damn status quo.
William was surprisingly heated, but he was honest about his anger coming from how they had been treated, and not just defending Damon's honor. There were fierce looks all around. Balthazar clucked to himself, but he understood. They had been mistreated. They had resisted a master using his position of power to abuse them, and no one would step in and help them. When they had helped themselves, they had been punished for it. In a way, what had happened to them was a microcosm of what the Order and Callie had done to all the vampires. Damon nodded in understanding. What you must remember is that most everyone has been misled by Callie, and most people are sheep. Elizabeth's eyebrows rose.
That is unkind, Damon.
But it's true. Damon's lips twitched. You know it to be true, Elizabeth. She inclined her head as she reluctantly added,
Thinking is difficult. Critically thinking is even more so, especially when it means going against your whole society.
But we can hate Callie, can't we?
William almost looked dismayed at the thought there was no one he could take vengeance on. There will be plenty of people who will stand against us, Damon assured him. His innocent, boyish William grinned. Balthazar tried not to sigh. He was more of a lover than a fighter himself, though there had been a time, right after Roan's death, when all he wanted to do was howl and fling himself against those smug bastards who were throwing him and the others away, as if they had not told us we were trash by not helping us in the first place.
Not as many as you might think.
Seer stated quietly.
People are hungry for meaning. You give that to them, my king.
Most definitely.
William nodded. Thank you, Seer. Callie's betrayal is because he sees me as having earned it, Damon murmured. I should not have left you all. I should have been stronger. You were weighed down with grief, Elgar stated softly, his fingers pausing on his constant swiping. Julian carded his hands through the back of Damon's thick black hair.
I'm sorry, but missing you doesn't mean he gets to lie to everyone and harm people.
Damon kissed Julian's forehead, but then he asked Seer, was it necessary? What Callie did? She thought for a moment.
You know that I believe everything has happened as it should, as it must.
You can really see the future?
Elizabeth asked, still petting Sophia. And it was Sophia who answered.
Oh, yes, it is our gift and our curse. Mistress sees so much more than even I do, and I see far.
Elizabeth gripped Sophia tighter to her, as if the future was going to sweep the vampire out of her grasp.
What I will say, Damon, is that Carly acted to form, but by the time he acted, there wasn't much to conquer.
Seer remarked, which is also part of Callie's form. He waits until the last possible moment. Damon shook his head. Part of me says that Callie cannot just get away with what he's done, Balthazar muttered. But another part of me worries that I'm being a hypocrite. How much of a part did I play in the war that came? How many bad choices did I make while you were asleep? I know I'm not blameless.
You tried to hold things together, Balthazar,
Seer assured him.
You reminded everyone that though Damon was asleep, he was not gone, and he would return. What would he think if he came back to a ruin?
Yes, well, he came back to a bunch of brainwashed vampires. I mean, I didn't even believe that immortals existed until he returned, and I am one, Balthazar cried. Master, you fought to the bitter end for the empire that was King Damon's, Elgar assured him as well, clutching the skull. You gave your life for it. You see me as quite a bit better than I am, Elgar. I know myself. I doubt I acted perfectly. Balthazar's grim mood was suddenly squashed as the black kitten climbed up the arm of the couch and took pride of place on his crotch again, where he promptly fell asleep. Balthazar petted the soft head, but quickly snatched his hand away and cleared his throat noisily. Sophia burbled out a little laugh. Regardless of what was done in the past, Callie is acting in the present. Callie wants my attention. He feels he has cause to be angry with me, and that what he did by creating the order was to establish peace at any cost, Damon said, his voice dropping low and his gaze going distant. It was only when Julian squeezed his arm that he refocused once more. His expression hardened. He will get that attention, and he will rue the moment he wanted it.
Will there be many deaths?
Elizabeth paled. Her gaze immediately went to the two boys that were her sons. Only for those who want it. Damon's cold smile was not one that Balthazar would ever want aimed at him. He tented his hands and rested his chin upon them. Eliminating the threat that Callie poses is not where our focus should be. As I said, Callie is a remnant of the past. We need to be looking to the future. Balthazar felt that vision of dread and excitement. Damon was going to tell the group. He was going to tell them about his plans for the world. What do you think this world needs? Damon asked. Do you think it needs more direct control by us? The vampires all blinked and shifted except for those who had already guessed Damon's desires to take over this planet.
Humanity is as humanity has always been, self-destructive.
Elena murmured.
But they are still here and have created many wonders.
Yes, but at what cost?
Ridley asked, as she toyed with her phone.
The world is polluted. It is warming at an alarming rate. There will be water shortages and food shortages and pandemics. Humanity has not been such good stewards, if you ask me.
After the war we just talked about, do you think we're any better? Balthazar challenged her. Think how we were treated by the Vampire Council. Think about how just a few weeks ago we had to beg, barter, and steal to get what we needed from other houses, even within our own bloodline.
You're probably right, Balthazar, that we aren't much better.
William agreed with a shake of his head.
But
Damon's voice was soft.
humans are our food and our way to procreate.
William answered with a shrug.
But humans aren't cattle.
Elizabeth cried.
No, Mother. We here don't treat them as such.
Christian spoke up.
But I don't think we should act as if we are not bound to their fate. As William said, we need them to feed from and make more vampires, so we have a vested interest in sustaining them.
What are you suggesting, Christian?
Henry asked his son. Christian drew in a breath, but then said,
Humans are mortals. Even if they are thinking of their grandchildren or generations beyond, many more think only of themselves. Having someone in charge that has a longer view, even if it is self-serving, might be better.
You have a chilling intellect, my darling, Balthazar admitted to Christian.
I know that it isn't perhaps noble, but that doesn't mean what I'm saying isn't best, at least for vampires, and I believe for humans too.
Christian answered. So you would advocate a more direct role by vampires in human affairs? Damon clarified, even though Balthazar was certain he knew exactly what Christian meant. He wants everyone else to know it.
We already do have a role.
Ridley pointed out.
But we need to be more of one, much more of one,
Christian said. Balthazar grimaced. Though Christian was right, he knew that his fledgling would remember these words later when Damon did exactly what he suggested. The Vampire King straightened out and then smiled just before Balthazar's phone buzzed. He fished it out of his pocket, careful not to disturb the kitten too much. Yes? Balthazar saw it was the gate guard. He noticed that all his house members were checking their phones. It was then he also felt the swell of voices in his head. He had been noticing their growing intensity, but had ignored it to focus on the moment. He realized his mistake. Balthazar, the gate guard said breathlessly. You need to get out here. There are people to see you. Lots and lots of people. Understood. Balthazar ended the call and looked over at the grinning Vampire King. You're going with me to see this pitchfork-wielding crowd. They are undoubtedly here for you, Damon. I will go with you, old friend, Damon laughed. But I assure you that they are here for you. Then I must be prepared for battle. Balthazar scooped up the black kitten and placed him on his shoulder, where the kitten easily rested as if meant to be there. I shall bring Mephistopheles here, Mephi for short. He will be my battle cat. Let us go, King Damon. We are well protected. Mephi meowed. Join us next time for episode 92. The show has just begun.
If you want to support this podcast and get the unedited episodes, we actually have something better than a Patreon. I have my own serial subscription website, wraithrain.com. It's an old-fashioned paywall site, just like Netflix or Crunchyroll. With a membership, you do get the uncut versions of Everdark with no intros, outros, or edited parts. Just the chapters as they were meant to be heard before we've had to make it all Disney safe. If this sounds interesting to you, try us out for a month. The link to sign up is in the notes. The most you'll pay is $9.95 a month, and you'll be directly supporting us, real people, not big corporations like Amazon or Netflix, not content created with AI. Wraith Rain is a small team of actual humans doing the best we can to transport you with romantic action and adventure stories. We really thank you for your support.